In the dead of night, when the world sleeps, the shadows grow long and silence envelops every corner of the neighborhood. But on the morning of December 5th, 2018, the stillness was broken, and it would never be the same again. Elisha Vernon Davis, a 29-year-old father from Little Rock, Arkansas, was found dead under mysterious circumstances. The case seemed like an isolated tragedy. An ordinary night turned into a nightmare. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that there was more lurking beneath the surface. Was it a random act of violence, or was there a deeper, more sinister reason behind Elisha's death? This is a story of family, secrets, and the haunting question that remains unanswered. Who killed Elisha Vernon Davis?
Elisha Vernon Davis was more than just a name. He was a father, a son, and a friend. A hard-working man with a heart of gold. He was the kind of person who could light up a room with his infectious laughter. Born and raised in Little Rock, Elisha had lived there most of his life. His friends described him as easygoing, always ready to help anyone in need. But underneath his cheerful exterior, Elisha had struggles of his own. A rocky relationship with his ex-girlfriend, constant tension with his family, and a lack of financial stability weighed heavily on him. Still, he pushed forward, working at a local auto shop, doing everything he could to provide for his two young children, whom he adored more than anything. For his family and friends, Elisha's death came as a complete shock. He had no enemies, at least none that anyone knew of. The idea that someone could want him dead seemed impossible. Yet that's exactly what happened. The circumstances surrounding his death would send shockwaves through the small community, and for the next few years, no one would be able to provide answers.
It was a quiet, crisp December evening when everything changed. Elisha had been spending time with his children earlier that day. As the hours passed, his neighbors noticed something strange. They had heard arguing from his house, a loud, heated exchange that seemed to escalate as the evening wore on. Then, around midnight, one of his neighbors noticed that Elisha's porch light was still on, which was unusual. Concerned, they decided to check on him, but when they knocked, there was no response. Alarmed, they called the police. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Elisha lying unconscious on the floor of his living room. His body was battered, bloodied, and bruised, but what was most chilling was the way he had been left. The house appeared undisturbed, but there were signs of a violent struggle. A broken chair lay near the door, and the television was still on in the background. At first glance, it didn't seem like a robbery. His wallet, phone, and keys were all found inside the house. No obvious signs of forced entry suggested that the killer was familiar with Elisha. The police were left with more questions than answers.
The investigation into Elisha's death began immediately. Detective Ryan Holt, a seasoned investigator, was assigned the case. He described the scene as unsettling, almost too quiet for such a violent crime. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints on the door, and no evidence of a struggle outside. The immediate assumption was that Elisha knew his killer, or that they had been invited into his home. The police turned to the people closest to Elisha, his family, his ex-girlfriend, and his friends. They learned that Elisha had been in a tumultuous relationship with his ex, a woman named Jessica Thompson. The couple had been fighting frequently in the months leading up to Elisha's death. Though they had been broken up for a few months, Jessica had reportedly shown up at his house the day before his murder, angry and upset about something. But when the police questioned Jessica, she vehemently denied any involvement. She claimed that she was at home with her new boyfriend at the time of Elisha's death. Her alibi checked out, and there was no evidence linking her to the crime. Still, the investigators couldn't ignore the possibility that an unresolved conflict between them could have escalated into something deadly. Next, the police turned their attention to Elisha's family, particularly his cousin, Robert Davis. Robert had been living nearby, and neighbors had seen him around Elisha's house in the days leading up to the murder. At first, Robert was cooperative with investigators, but as the hours wore on, he became increasingly nervous. He claimed that he hadn't been at Elisha's home that night, but there was something about his story that didn't sit right with the detectives. Despite multiple interviews, Robert's statements didn't align with the physical evidence. The investigators discovered that Robert had been in a financial dispute with Elisha. The two had been fighting over a loan that Elisha had given him months before. Robert owed Elisha a significant amount of money, and tensions had been rising between them. But when they checked Robert's alibi, they couldn't find anything solid to confirm or deny his whereabouts. The lack of concrete evidence meant they couldn't make an arrest, and the case remained unsolved.
The theories about Elisha's death quickly spread throughout the community, each one more outlandish than the last. Some believed that it was a random robbery gone wrong. Perhaps the killer had targeted Elisha's home hoping for cash or valuables and became violent when things didn't go as planned. Others speculated that it was someone from Elisha's past, someone seeking revenge over a long-forgotten grievance. One theory that gained traction was the idea that the murder was related to Elisha's strained relationship with his cousin Robert. While Robert was a person of interest, the lack of evidence and his seemingly airtight alibi left investigators unable to pursue this theory with confidence. Another theory suggested that Elisha was involved in something far darker than anyone realized. Drug trafficking, perhaps, or some kind of underground activity. But again, this theory quickly fell apart when investigators found no evidence to support it. No drugs were found in Elisha's home, and no connections to any illegal activities were uncovered. The murder of Elisha Vernon Davis left a deep scar in the community. His family, especially his two young children, were devastated. Elisha's mother, who had always been close to her son, was inconsolable. She spent every waking moment hoping for answers. The uncertainty surrounding his death tore at her heart, knowing that the person who had killed her son was still out there. For the friends and co-workers who knew Elisha, the murder didn't make sense. He was the kind of person who would give you the shirt off his back. He had no enemies, no hidden secrets. The idea that someone would take his life for no apparent reason haunted them all. As the months turned into years, the case of Elisha Vernon Davis remained unsolved. Investigators never stopped looking for clues, but new leads were few and far between. The case was cold, and many feared it would remain that way forever. To this day, Elisha's family still seeks justice. The community continues to whisper about the murder, speculating about the identity of the killer, but the truth has remained elusive. Elisha Vernon Davis's life was tragically cut short, and the mystery of his death hangs over his family and the town of Little Rock. The killer is still out there, somewhere, and Elisha's family holds on to the hope that one day the truth will come to light. In the end, the case of Elisha Vernon Davis remains one of Little Rock's most haunting unsolved mysteries. The whispers of what happened on that cold December night still echo through the streets. Was it a random act of violence? Or did someone with a closer connection to Elisha have a hidden motive? The answers remain unknown. What happened to Elisha Vernon Davis may never be fully understood, but his family and friends continue to search for justice. As the case lingers in the cold shadows, one thing is clear: the truth is still out there, waiting to be uncovered.